there. Ready to dive into a fascinating chapter of history you've been curious about.
Absolutely.
Today's deep dive takes us to ancient Korea.
Really, centuries before the modern nation we know.
We're talking powerful kingdoms, cultural crossroads, the whole shebang.
Right.
Using these excerpts about ancient Korea you provided, we're going beyond names and dates to uncover what made this period tick.
What's often overlooked is that when we say ancient Korea, we're not talking about a unified entity just yet.
Right.
Picture a vibrant tapestry of states, each with its own distinct culture and ambitions, all navigating their place on the peninsula.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? It's like a historical puzzle with all these moving pieces.
It really is.
So where do we even begin with a story this complex?
Well, a good place to start is with Gojoseon. It's the earliest attested Korean state, dating back to at least the 4th century BCE.
Okay.
Now, distinguishing it from the later Joseon dynasty is key.
Hi.
Gojoseon literally translates to Old Joseon, a distinction historians use to avoid confusion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this old Joseon. What
Right.
can we glean about its origins and cultural landscape?
That's where it gets really fascinating. While its exact origins are shrouded in mystery, by the 4th century BCE, Gojoseon was a significant presence, engaging in both trade and conflict with powerful Chinese states like Zhao and Yan. Yet, despite these interactions, they maintained their independence.
That's a really important point.
It is.
It's not just about political boundaries. It speaks to a deeply rooted cultural identity.
Absolutely. Gojoseon's culture was unique, distinct from its neighbors. This independent spirit would have a profound impact on how later Korean kingdoms interacted with their powerful neighbor to the west.
It makes you wonder if they were so successful independently, what ultimately led to their downfall.
Their undoing came with the rise of a new power in the east, the Han dynasty of China. In 108 BCE, the Han armies conquered Gojoseon, marking a turning point in Korean history.
And I'm guessing this is where those Chinese commanderies you mentioned come into play.
Yes.
So for those of us who haven't exactly been brushing up on our ancient Korean history, what were they exactly and how did they change the game?
Think of commanderies as strategically placed centers of Chinese influence.
Okay.
After conquering Gojoseon, the Han dynasty established 4 of these administrative zones to solidify their control.
Okay.
These weren't mere outposts, but rather they acted as instruments of cultural and administrative change.
Okay, so 4 commanderies, but I imagine some held more weight than others.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Of the 4, Lelang, established in the 108 BCE near present-day Pyongyang, emerged as the most significant and enduring. It boasted a sophisticated administration with its capital at Wangimsan, a city carefully positioned for strategic control.
And how long are we talking about here? Surely these commanderies didn't just disappear overnight, right?
Get this. Lelang's influence was so deeply rooted that it outlasted the very dynasty that established it. It even persisted under the later Wei dynasty, until finally falling to the burgeoning Korean kingdom of Goguryeo in 313 CE, marking over 400 years of continuous influence.
Wow, talk about a lasting legacy. But while all this was happening in the north, what was going on in the south? It wasn't just sitting idly by, right?
Not at all. While the commanderies consolidated power in the north, a different kind of story was unfolding in the south with the emergence of the 3 Han federations, Mahan, Jinhan, and Boyanhan.
Ah, the 3 Han federations. This is where things get even more interesting, don't you think?
Absolutely. Now, it's important to understand that these weren't unified kingdoms like Gojoseon,
Okay.
but rather alliances of smaller states, each federation with its own distinct character and eventual destiny. And their stories are deeply intertwined with the rise of the 3 kingdoms of Korea, which we'll get to in a bit.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. I can't wait to unpack that. But before we jump ahead, let's talk more about these federations. What happened to them?
Well, their fates are a testament to the complex and often unpredictable nature of history. For example, it was widely believed that Mahan was fully integrated into the Baekje kingdom by 369 CE. However, a fascinating discovery in 1996 challenged this narrative.
Ooh, I love a good historical plot twist. What was discovered?
Archaeologists unearthed a tomb belonging to a Mahan leader that dated back to the 6th century. This suggests that elements of Mahan might have persisted, possibly under Baekje's influence, far longer than history originally recorded.
That changes things.
It does.
A kingdom thought gone, living on in the shadows. It really goes to show that we can't take historical narratives at face value. There's always more to uncover. So what about the other 2 federations? What were their fates?
Jinhan, as it turns out, played a pivotal role in the formation of the Silla Kingdom, which, as you know, went on to become one of the major players during the Three Kingdoms period.
Wow, so even though these southern federations may have seemed less powerful compared to the kingdoms in the north, they ultimately gave rise to some of the most influential entities in Korean history. It's fascinating to see how those early dynamics played out.
Precisely. And then there's Bayonhan. It played a crucial role in forming the Gaia Confederacy, another significant entity that we'll delve into further a bit later.
Okay, so we've got these southern federations with their own intricate stories. But meanwhile, up north, another power is emerging, right? One that will ultimately change the course of Korean history. Goguryeo.
You're exactly right. And that's where things get really interesting. Goguryeu's story is one of ambition, resilience, and cultural dynamism. It's a kingdom often shrouded in myth and legend, which only adds to its allure.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. So tell me, how did this kingdom come to be? What can we uncover about its origins?
Well, the traditional narrative dates Goguryeu's founding to 37 BCE, attributing it to a figure named Jumong, a refugee from the kingdom of Buyeo. Now, like many founding figures from antiquity, separating historical fact from legend can be tricky.
So Jumong might be a blend of myth and reality, but his story at the very least laid the foundation for a powerful kingdom. What can we say about those early years?
Well, while Goguryeu's early history has its share of ambiguity, we know they were determined to make their mark. They engaged in territorial expansion, clashed with Chinese forces, and demonstrated a clear disregard for the established order.
They weren't afraid of a challenge, that's for sure. And this boldness ultimately culminated in a pivotal moment for Goguryeo in the year 313 CE, right? Conquering that long-standing commandery we talked about earlier.
Exactly. In 313 CE, Goguryeo achieved a decisive victory, conquering Lelang and effectively ending direct Chinese rule in the north. This was a turning point. Imagine a commandery established in the 108 BCE, surviving multiple dynasties, finally falls to this ambitious Korean kingdom.
It's almost poetic, a changing of the guard. This victory must have sent shockwaves throughout the region. What did it mean for Goguryeu's future?
It solidified their status as a major power. In fact, Goguryeo went on to reach its zenith under King Gwanggaeto and his successor, King Jiangsu. Under their rule, the kingdom controlled a vast territory that encompassed a significant portion of the Korean peninsula, even stretching into Manchuria.
That's an incredible legacy. They went from a fledgling kingdom to a dominant force in just a few centuries. It makes you wonder, with all this expansion, how did Goguryeo navigate its relationship with China? It must have been complicated.
You're right, it was a complex dance between diplomacy, conflict, and cultural exchange. At times, they paid tribute to the Chinese court, a strategic maneuver, as much as a sign of respect. Other times, they were engaged in outright warfare to protect their interests and autonomy.
So it was a delicate balancing act. They were strong enough to stand up to China militarily, but also savvy enough to engage in diplomacy and cultural exchange when it suited them. It speaks to a really adaptable and sophisticated civilization.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And this exchange wasn't one-sided. While Goguryeo adopted elements of Chinese culture, like Confucianism, Buddhism, and even the Chinese writing system, they integrated these influences into their existing traditions, creating something uniquely their own.
It's like they took those outside influences and made them their own. They weren't just absorbing, they were innovating. That's a testament to their strong sense of identity. But I imagine this balancing act wasn't easy. What about their relationships with the other Korean kingdoms? How did that play out?
As you might imagine, it was a constant game of power. It's important to remember that Goguryeo wasn't the only player on the peninsula. We have to consider the other two kingdoms that rose to prominence during this period, Baekje and Silla. Remember the three Han federations?
Right. Jinhan evolved into Silla, and Bainhan contributed to the Gaia Confederacy.
Exactly. And Mahan, as we discussed, had a more complex relationship with Baekje than initially thought. These kingdoms, Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla, were constantly vying for power, forging alliances, breaking them, and engaging in conflict.
It sounds like a real-life Game of Thrones. So with all this intrigue and power play, what ultimately led to Goguryeu's decline? They were such a dominant force for centuries.
Well, even the mightiest empires faced their twilight. In the 7th century, Goguryeo found itself facing a formidable alliance. Silla, their longtime rival in the south, had joined forces with Tang China.
A powerful combination. It's almost Shakespearean. The kingdom that had once defied Chinese dominance was now facing a combined force from both Korea and China.
It was a challenge too great even for Goguryeo. In 668 CE, after a long and arduous campaign, The kingdom fell to the combined forces of Silla and Tang China, marking the end of an era and paving the way for a unified Silla kingdom.
It's incredible to think about how interconnected these kingdoms were, the rise and fall of each one directly impacting the others. But even though Goguryeo eventually fell, its influence didn't just vanish, did it?
You're exactly right, and that's what makes studying history so compelling. It's not just about dates and conquests, it's about understanding the enduring legacies that shape the world we know today.
It's remarkable how much ground we've covered, from the mysterious beginnings of Gojoseon to the rise and fall of Goguryeo. It really paints a vivid picture of the dynamism and complexity of ancient Korea.
It really wasn't a static period by any means. It was a constant ebb and flow of influence,
Yeah.
with these powerful kingdoms rising and falling, leaving their own unique mark on the peninsula. And interwoven through it all is this constant cultural exchange.
Right. It reminds us that history isn't linear. It's messy, full of surprises, unexpected turns, and enduring legacies.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so captivating to explore. The world we live in today is a direct result of these complex interactions, these power struggles and cultural exchanges that played out over centuries.
So, as we try to synthesize all this information about ancient Korea, what are the key takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
Firstly, it's crucial to remember that Korea has a long and rich history, extending far beyond the well-known Three Kingdoms period. Goseon, despite its shrouded origins, embodies a distinct Korean identity that thrived centuries before significant Chinese influence took hold.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that these ancient Korean states weren't just passive entities waiting to be absorbed. They were active players on the historical stage, shaping their own destinies.
Precisely. And of course, we have the undeniable impact of the Chinese commanderies, particularly Lelang. They introduced new administrative systems, technologies, and cultural ideas, leaving a permanent imprint on Korean society.
Yeah, it speaks to the complex legacy of conquest. While often brutal, it can also be a conduit for cultural exchange and the spread of ideas.
Very true. And finally, the story of Goguryeo, their rise from humble beginnings to become a dominant force, their complex relationship with China, and their eventual fall offers valuable lessons about ambition, the nature of power, and the cyclical nature of history.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how even the mightiest empires are, in a way, transient. Nothing lasts forever.
It's a sobering thought, but a crucial one for understanding the patterns of history. However, it's important not to view the fall of Goguryeo solely as a tragic end. While their political dominance eventually came to an end, their legacy lived on, influencing later Korean kingdoms and contributing to the rich tapestry of Korean culture.
That's a great point. It reinforces the idea that the impact of these ancient kingdoms extends far beyond their time on the political stage.
Their stories, their cultures, their struggles and triumphs all played a role in shaping the Korea we know today.
And that's what makes exploring ancient history so rewarding. It's a journey of discovery that allows us to connect the dots between the past and the present.
It's like piecing together a puzzle. Each event, each character, each interaction adds a new layer of understanding, helping us make sense of the complex tapestry of human history.
And with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into ancient Korea. It's been a fascinating journey through a pivotal period of Korean history. We've learned about powerful kingdoms, cultural crossroads, and the enduring legacy of this ancient land.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. Until next time.